Tem como título A Hora Azul e é o mais recente romance de Paula Hawkins. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
A new book, and now we have art piece in the center of this book. A very peculiar art piece, right?
Yes, that's right. The book opens with this art piece which is being displayed at a gallery in London at the Tate Modern, and one of the visitors to the gallery spots that there's something within this art piece is a bit odd because it's made out of lots of different materials, of wood and pebbles and ceramic and bone. And this visitor spots that the bone is not an animal bone, it's actually a human one.
Well, you talked about odd, but everything is odd around these characters. Let's start with an artist, with the artist that made this art piece.
Yes, so her name is Vanessa Chapman. She is this woman who, she was living in England, but then she left her husband, she bought a house on a very remote island off the coast of Scotland. And there she goes to dedicate her life to art, to work, to be free of the world. And when the book opens, she's already dead. That's not a spoiler. She's already dead. But what we have to do then is follow the other characters through the novel to try and find out how she lived her life and to solve this mystery of the mysterious sculpture.
And then she has a friend, Grace.
She does. Her very dear friend and her carer at the end of her life is a woman called Grace. And Grace is still living on the island. And Grace is kind of a keeper of the secrets and a protector of Vanessa's legacy. She's quite a complicated character. She's very accomplished. She's a doctor. But she's had some troubles in her life and she's got quite a dark side to her too.
And then we have a foundation and the family who owns that foundation that inherited all Vanessa's art piece, right?
That's right. The foundation, the Fairbairn Foundation, inherited all of Vanessa's artistic works, not her home, but her artistic works. So they own this sculpture and they need to find out where the bone came from because they don't want to get into trouble. So the man who's the curator at the foundation is a man called Becker, and he has to go and play detective. He has to go out to the island to meet Grace. They form this kind of uneasy alliance as they start digging into Vanessa's past and trying to find out where the bodies are buried.
Well, and he has a very peculiar love life too. We are not going to talk a lot about that. Again, a very different book from The Girl on the Train. So that is a challenge that you put to yourself. Each book has to be different, right?
Yeah, well, that's what makes it interesting for me. I don't want to do the same thing. I mean, I think you'll find that a lot of the themes and the things I'm interested in crop up through all the books, but it is a very different story to The Girl on the Train. I think it's a more layered, more complicated piece now than The Girl on the Train was. Obviously, it's a very different setting. But I'm still talking about, relationships between women, about how women are perceived by each other, by society, by the struggles that they face.
Domestic violence, abuse.
It does, that crops up. There's a couple of the characters who faced violence in their lives, and one of the themes of the book is how they've recovered from that and how they've fought back against that. So there are lots of themes that will be familiar to readers of The Girl on the Train, even though it is a very different novel.
Yes, but mental health, again, it's another important subject of the book.
Yeah, so I guess loneliness crops up a lot. And when I started writing this, we were coming out of the pandemic, and the whole issue about people being lonely and living alone and feeling isolated had been on my mind a lot. But on the same time, I was also thinking about how some people really yearn for solitude and desire that feeling of being away. That's what I dream about sometimes. I dream about running away to an island and not talking to anyone for a long time. So it's a kind of push and pull between needing to be part of a community, but also wanting to be completely free from all the demands and the expectations that the world puts on you.
Yes, well, not completely free because, for example, these characters who live in this island, they are subjected to see and what he allows them to do, right?
That's true, because the island is not a real island, it's tidal, so you can get to it when the tide is out, but when the tide is in, you're cut off from the mainland. So I saw an island like this when I was on holiday in France years ago, and I saw this little island that just had one house on it, and I was so intrigued by kind of wondering what sort of person would want to go and live somewhere where twice a day you're completely cut off and it's beyond your control. You're at the mercy of the sea. And that's what happens to the characters. And so that their lives, the rhythm of their lives is kind of dictated by the rhythm of the tide.
You like that.
Yeah.
Why?
It's intriguing. It's intriguing to me that how it would feel to just kind of surrender yourself, and you'd have to be at one with nature to some degree, and you'd have to be very accepting of that. And what would that do to you? How would it change you? How would it change how you think about the world?
I believe you have learned a lot about art.
I did a lot of reading about art. I love art. I like going to museums and galleries, and I really enjoyed reading about the lives of artists. I read memoirs and biographies, and I went to watch Ceramsa's potters making things, because my artist, she paints, she makes sculpture, but she also makes ceramics. And so I did lots of research, which was really enjoyable for me.
What have you learned?
Well, one of the things I learned about potter studios is that they're full of little implements that you could kill someone with. They're full of like knives and wires and all sorts of things. So that's something. And it's a dangerous business being a potter.
Well, let's see what is going to happen in the next book. Well, because I think we can say this. In the end, everything can happen in the end, at the end of this book. So maybe you will keep these characters with you, or no?
I have no plans just yet, but I would never say never. I do like the idea of maybe one day returning, maybe to a minor character from a novel. So I'm not planning a sequel, but maybe one day. Never say never.
Who knows?
Yeah.
And, well, maybe the next book can take place in the financial world, because you start your career as a journalist.
I did.
As a financial journalist. But you have never wrote one of these books in this strange world?
Yeah, I don't want to return to the financial world. No, I've left that all behind me. I'm not sure where the next novel will be. I think it might be in London, but I'm not sure. But it won't be about the financial world.
Or Braga.
Well, I mean, what an amazing place. This is such a beautiful place. It's such an ancient place, isn't it? Full of churches, full of mysteries, I'm sure. So, yeah, you never know.
What do you like about thrillers? Why made you start writing thrillers? Because you published, I believe, 1 or 2 other books that are not four. That are not thrillers, right?
Romantic comedies. I do this because...
Romantic comedies?
Allegedly. I've always been drawn to darker stories. That's what I like to read. They're the stories that intrigue me. If I'm reading a newspaper, it's the crime pages, the stories that draw my attention, particularly the ones about ordinary people, where ordinary lives have somehow gone wrong. I can't really explain why I'm always drawn to those stories, but those are the stories that I kind of catch my eye and that I want to keep returning to and keep asking myself, how is it that ordinary people get themselves into these terrible situations? What happened to them? And so a lot of the time in my novels, that's what I'll be doing. I'll be going back to see, how did these people get to where they are now? What made them like this? I'm just so intrigued by that.
So we will wait for the next one. I don't know if you have some kind of schedule? No.
I mean, a vague one. There is a deadline, but it's a little way in the future. So at the moment, I've got some ideas, I've got some characters kind of walking around in the back of my head that I'm thinking about. But I need to stop running around and touring the world and get back to my desk to my island, my imaginary island, in order to work properly. Yeah.
Hora Azul de Paula Hawkins. Thank you so much.
Thank you.